And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of the program. From very high above all the puerile and bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. If you hadn't realized it yet, things are heating up a bit in the Wyoming legislature. Last night, they debated Senate File 69 until fairly late in the evening. Now, by fairly late, I mean like 6 or 6:30. But usually, the legislative session is over around 4. That's unless, of course, there are a whole bunch of people that want to pontificate on things that they really don't know that much about or are really trying hard to confuse you about. Well, anyway, my friends, I've got a bunch of sound bites, and we're going to talk about this property tax cut bill, Senate File 69, and a whole bunch of other stuff. One thing that I've been meaning to talk about for a while is DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It turns out they've uncovered about $1.7 trillion worth of improperly made payments that were sent overseas for Medicare and Medicaid. So there's a bunch of stuff happening today. But first, my friends, it's Open Line Thursday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Thursday on Cowboy State Politics Live. This is the day when we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Normally during the week, you have to kind of talk about what I want to talk about, but not today. If there's something on your mind, you just give me a call and we'll talk about it. The phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, if you have something on your mind, if you think all of these folks in the Wyoming legislature are nothing but a bunch of hot air, well, then give me a call and tell me about it. One more time, that phone number is 307-374-8989, whatever's on your mind. But we begin this morning with the Wyoming turkey vulture. The Senate's 50% property tax cut bill passed the House last night on first reading. Now, that really isn't the headline. I mean, I guess it's important. That Wyoming citizens have been screaming about a property tax cut for a really long time. And the legislature has, up until now, been pretty resistant, intransigent even, about giving Wyoming citizens a property tax cut. Now, one of the things that wasn't heard very often on the floor last night, I think there was maybe one or two people that mentioned this, is that the government doesn't have its own money. There's no such thing as government money. You hear people say a lot of times, well, it's government funded. No, nothing is government funded. There isn't a single dime that is in any government account anywhere that doesn't really belong to you and me. Your city, your county, your state, all of it is funded by tax dollars. And as such, you would think that the government should be responsive to the will of the people. Whatever the people want, right? Well, I guess that's true in some cases. Sometimes, it's pretty easy to inflame a mob. But not this time. For years, Wyoming citizens have been screaming that their property taxes have been increasing too rapidly. And some people are getting taxed out of their homes. I know a lady in Jackson who she bought her house in like 1965 or something, a really long time ago. She's not rich, doesn't have a lot of money. Well, now her house is worth over $1 million, couple $1 million actually, and there's just no way that she can pay for her property taxes. And so at 90 years old, she's taken a job answering a phone at a local business at 90 years old. And all of it is due to rising property values. And the way that our system is currently set up is that your house is assessed on the current market, what the Department of Revenue calls the full market value. Interestingly enough, though, the Wyoming legislature has never defined what full market value means. The only thing that we, the little people, are left to know is that the government tells us you owe us this much money, and that if you don't pay it, we're going to take your property from us. So last year, the legislature's response to all of the calls for property tax relief was to pass a cap at 4%. The year property taxes could not go up any more than 4% in a given year, which sounds great until you start to think about it. Really, the only thing the bill did was lock in property taxes at the historically high rate that they were last year. So you don't get a property tax cut. You don't get a reduction in the value of, or in the amount that you pay the government. The only thing that they guaranteed is that your taxes will double within 20 years. Absolutely outrageous. And think about this. Our government spends like a bunch of drunken sailors. And actually, that's not really fair to drunken sailors because, as Ronald Reagan said, the sailors are spending their own money. Well, the Senate has passed Senate File 69, and now it's in the House of Representatives. Senate File 69 is a 50% tax cut on properties of $1 million or less. So that's going to encompass most Wyoming citizens. But the big question last night is, how much is this actually going to hurt local governments? Well, that was a matter of some debate, and you really have to look at the numbers to find out the truth. But first, let's go to the Wyoming turkey vulture. And I quote, a 50% property tax reduction bill passed the Senate on 3 readings, or that has passed the Senate on 3 readings, has passed for the first time in the House of Representatives. Wednesday evening, the House used a voice vote to approve Senate File 69, homeowner property tax exemption. It must pass 2 more times in the House to advance. Representative John Baer explained that there are a few key differences between the 2 most prominent bills in the current session that remain alive and offer property tax relief: Senate File 69 and House Bill 169. Both apply a 50% exemption to a single-family home up to $1 million in value for 2 years only. However, Senate File 69 includes an exemption for associated land, while House Bill 169 does not. That means the reduction in revenue to all entities that receive revenue from property taxation would be reduced by about $525 million under Senate File 69, as compared to about $400 million on House Bill 169. So let's first tackle the question of how much is this going to hurt local communities? Because there were a number of people on the floor of the House that said we're going to have to fire policemen and get rid of the fire department. In fact, the whole chamber yesterday had a whole bunch of firemen sitting up there protesting the property tax bill. But the truth is, if local officials were being honest about this property tax bill, they would have to tell you that there isn't going to be probably a single fireman or single policeman that's going to be affected by this. So first, let's go to Representative J.D. Williams. Here's what he had to say in all of his ridiculous glory.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Backfill is not sustainable. Like we just heard, is not sustainable. It is a bandage or a Band-Aid, like we've heard.
All right, hold on. I can't stand this guy. If you listen to his videos on Facebook, he sounds like he's super, super confident and knows exactly what he's talking about. When he's up at the microphone, he sounds like an idiotic dunce. I mean, the guy can't even speak at the microphone. Oh, he just irritates the crap out of me. All right, well, let's continue.
large, ugly, self-inflicted, 50% cut wound. We've heard a little bit about
Oh,
a
the
better
pauses.
bandage
God, it kills
that
me.
we passed out of this body in the past few days. Even that bandage will not heal this wound.
It's a
It'll
wound.
just cover it.
Yeah.
I'm against this amendment.
Okay. All right. So the wound they're all talking about is that they're not going to have as much of your money to spend. That's the wound that they're talking about. Now, really, the one question that you should ask anybody when we are in a discussion about property taxes in Wyoming is this one. And it's really, really simple. Property taxes have gone up exponentially in the last 4 to 5 years, probably, well, since 2019, before COVID. Most counties have seen a double-digit increase in their property taxes. In Sheridan County alone, the budget has gone up several $1 million. And that's the case with a lot of Wyoming counties. So the one question you need to ask any government official is, where's my money? What did you do with all of the money that was brought into county coffers over the last 5 years? We know it's been tens of millions of dollars. What'd you do with it? Well, the answer is they spent it. And in Sheridan County, I've talked a lot about this $3 million flower pot that it's they took out a city street and built this like green space. And they used tax dollars to do it. It's absolutely not necessary. Frankly, it's the ugliest damn flower pot that I've ever seen. But they did that anyway. So the question is, where's my money, right? Well, they wasted it. Very few governments put anything back for a rainy day fund or anything like that. And so all of that money is spent on non-essential services and things that we don't really need and frankly aren't the role of government anyway. And so now you have all these services that you're paying for, all of these programs that you've created, and Wyoming taxpayers have said, this is enough. We're done with it, which is why the People's Initiative to Reduce Property Taxes got passed. Because frankly, Wyoming citizens have had enough of their rampant spending, and they've said, we're not going to pay for it anymore. And now government types like Dum Williams are saying, oh, it's a gaping hole. It's a wound. It's a self-inflicted wound. Well, the only wound that they've really created is the one that they've done to themselves, that they've spent us into oblivion, and now they're wondering how they're going to pay for everything. Because if they have to start firing people, well, then they're not going to get elected again. And make no mistake, that's what most of these people are worried about. Now, Representative John Baer was the guy that was floor managing Senate File 69. He's the chairman of Appropriations. He's a representative from Gillette. He's been on the program several times. And he was about the only one who was really clear-eyed about anything to do with Senate File 69. Here's what he had to say. Well, first, let's go with this one, and then I've got another John Baer soundbite for you.
City asked the question, where did the 50% come from? Again, I was not over in that other half of this building when they moved this bill from a 25% to a 50%, so I can really only speculate. But we also heard a testimony that for 4 years we've been hearing
4 years
our constituents ask for this. Many of this body have gotten up and spoken against the bill and for the amendment, but have said, by God, the people want it, and they're right to want it. But it doesn't make sense that you'd be against the bill if that were the case, but where did it come from? It came from this body delaying and dithering about taking care of the people, the taxpayers. You know, we just heard from the last speaker that it's a self-inflicted wound that we would reduce our spending in this government. Well, folks, what about the wound that we've inflicted on the people by allowing this increase? It was talked about by the previous speaker that we have this cap now that we passed last year. We do, and that's helpful from this point forward, but guess what it did? It enshrined an increase of double digits in almost every county. I think every county does qualify to be double digits in the last 4 years.
Exactly right. There you go. Now, the reason why it's a self-inflicted wound and the reason why the People's Initiative passed is, quite frankly, we're sick of the spending. And the only wound that has been created is by government bureaucrats and elected officials that just want to get reelected. Take a listen to what Landon Brown had to say. This is fascinating. Now, listen really carefully to what he says.
Cutting another 50% of the revenue from property taxes on this is going to make it hurt even worse. And I just heard the good representative. I appreciate the statement that this decision might be made for us by the voters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All I can say is, Lord help us if that's the case.
Lord help us if the voters make this decision for us. See, Landon Brown is one of these elected officials that he loves to spend your money. But when he's asked to reduce it, he doesn't want to do that because he knows it's going to tick people off, because he's the guy that irresponsibly created all of these programs. And now when taxpayers have said, we've had enough, he's worried about getting reelected because he just narrowly got reelected last time around. So you got to take all of these comments into context about what's going on. Most of your officials are not being honest with you. And they're not being honest with themselves, which is frankly just absolutely incredibly interesting. But anyway, my friends, we'll come back with more of this discussion of Senate File 69 in just a second. But for right now, an outrageous profit timeout, and so I can go get a cup of coffee. Back in a minute. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the article section of the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Thursday. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the Swamp Studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Before the break, we were talking about Senate File 69 and all of the hilarity that ensued on the floor of the House of Representatives last night. Now, here's the ridiculous part of this. I told you that almost all the elected representatives down there, at least the liberal ones, were screaming how we've got an open, gaping wound and we're going to have to fire policemen and get rid of the fire department and all of that. Well, the truth behind it is actually quite a bit different. Will counties have to take a little bit of hit with this thing? Yes, but it's not a gaping wound and it's not a big of reduction as they're letting on. So, for example, schools. The teachers union and teachers and, every school district. I mean, let's be honest, the vast majority of Wyoming's revenue goes to schools. Usually they're the folks that scream the loudest about any sort of property tax cut because they don't want their budgets to be cut either. And you got to think about this, right? The biggest economy in Wyoming, the biggest part of our economy, is not coal mining. It's not tourism. It's not the national parks. It's not anything like that. It is government. Government is the number one industry in the state of Wyoming. There are towns like Buffalo, Wyoming, for example, that a conservative estimate is that 70% of the jobs in Buffalo, Wyoming are government. When you include the BLM, the Forest Service, county, city, all of it, schools, most people work for the government. And so when there's a big property tax cut on the table, when Wyoming taxpayers have finally said, we've had enough and we're not paying for this anymore, Jack, of course people get worried. But here, the fascinating thing about Senate File 69 and House Bill 169 is that schools will not see a dime of decrease in their budget. In fact, there's money in the supplemental budget for a raise for all those folks. Here's John Baer, Chairman of Appropriations, saying that very thing on the floor. Listen to him.
But the point there that needs to be taken home and out to the public, and I want to say this clearly to both this body and to the public, that our schools are going to be 100% funded. They are going to be able to spend their block grant, and they are going to be funded 100%. Not one school is going to have any less money next year or the year after that based on the actions of this body, including the passing of a school choice bill. So we are funding it all. And remember, if a student happens to leave the public schools, they still have a 3-year running average where they get paid for that student. So honestly, we're going to have a bonus within our education funding based on the way we fund education. And I will remind this body of one other thing. In this budget, your JAC brought it to you and you approved it. An ECA, an external cost adjustment, which included raises for non-professional staff and professional staff. So we're not only funding it, we're funding it to a higher level than we've ever done before.
Okay, now think about that. Schools are not seeing a single decrease. In fact, there's an increase in the supplemental budget. And so at the same time, we're reducing property taxes by 50% on residential property under $1 million. We're still able to increase the amount of funding going to schools. That's absolutely incredible. And if you take a step back and think about it, how much money do we actually have that we're able to reduce taxes and throw more money at education? Okay, well, that's schools. Now let's talk about local governments for a minute, because this is really important. Even though the property tax exemption in Senate File 69 it says 50%. So you're going to get a 50% reduction in your property taxes. But the truth is, most counties, and I'm not saying all, I'm saying most counties, don't receive that much money in their total budget from residential property taxes. Most of it comes from minerals or industry or other revenue streams, but a very small percentage comes from residential property taxes. So, for example, in Sheridan County, 32% of the budget is residential property taxes. Okay, so in houses under... So, by the way, a 50% reduction, let's start there. That brings it down to, we'll just use round numbers, 15%. Well, the truth is the exemption applies to properties under $1 million. So you can exempt, you don't even have to worry about all those other properties. So let's just say that we're down to 15%. Well, there isn't a budget around that couldn't handle a 10% or a 15% cut. Now, are there going to be some positions eliminated? Sure. But those positions probably never should have been created in the first place. Well, that's Sheridan County. But take for example, Niobrara County. This one's fascinating. Niobrara County is one of the what they call hardship counties. There are 8 of those in the state of Wyoming that don't bring in enough in residential property taxes to handle their essential services. So the way that they're funded is through what are called recapture districts. So you have some counties in Wyoming that bring in way more money in residential property taxes than they actually need. So Teton County is one of those. That money is collected by the state and then divvied up to those 8 other counties. Now in Niobrara County, and I haven't told you the best part about this whole session yet, but in Niobrara County, Dixie Huxtable, who is the assessor in Converse County, put together this spreadsheet. And sometime today or maybe tomorrow, I'll throw it up on the website so you can download it and take a look at it. I'll try to do that before I leave today. But anyway, in Niobrara County, the spreadsheet shows that really the impact to their budget is $100,000. Now, to you and me, $100,000 is a lot of money. But in government terms, $100,000 is hardly anything. You're talking about, 1.5, maybe 2 full-time positions. But when you're doing government budgeting, $100,000 doesn't go very far. That's not even going to buy you a new piece of equipment. It might buy you a new pickup truck, but probably not one, not a backhoe, not a excavator, not a dump truck, any of those things. So one of the lowest, or I don't even know how to put this, but one of the hardship counties, probably the one that brings in the least amount of property taxes, Niobrara County, is only going to get hit with $100,000. Now compare that to a bigger county like Campbell County. Last night I was sitting in the gallery with the Campbell County Commissioner and we went over all of the budgetary numbers from Campbell County. And the truth is they only bring in 7% of their total revenue through residential property taxes. So really when you apply this 50% exemption, it's going to be a lot less. So a lot of what you hear and heard on the floor of the House of Representatives last night is bullcrap. You're not going to see a lot of firemen fired. You're still going to have police departments. Everything is going to work just fine. And the world is not going to come crashing in around you. But that's not what politicians say. And of course, this is a big political talking point. And, it's so take, for example, Julie Jarvis. Every time she gets up to the microphone, I just cringe because it's going to be a diatribe that's going to be painful to listen to. And it was last night. According to the Turkey Vulture, and I quote, Representative Julie Jarvis of Casper said she could not support Senate File 69 and she did not vote for House Bill 169 because it have an outsized effect on all Wyoming. The cuts, she said, will also draw the state's savings down to nothing. We're not in a financial crisis, but we're about to be in a really big one. And it was self-induced and it was self-created. All right. Well, the question is it a giant fiscal crisis? I already told you how most counties are not going to be impacted all that much. And there's an amendment to the supplemental budget to add $74 million to cover special districts in hardship counties. So even the counties that are going to be affected the most by this, by Senate File 69 are still going to be receiving a backfill from the supplemental budget. So all of this is just hyperbole, it's bullcrap, and it's political grandstanding by a bunch of liberals, including Julie Jarvis. It's absolutely incredible, my friends. Well, yesterday, moving on, I'm tired of talking about taxes. Moving on. Yesterday, I tried to play for you a moment of liberal redcoat insanity from courtesy of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, and I finally got it fixed so you can listen to it. This is a great soundbite. The bill was to ban the taxpayer dollars going to organizations that sponsor explicit events, drag shows. And this is the genesis of all this, is the Wyoming Department of Health gave $3,000 to, I believe it was Wyoming Equality, for a sponsored drag show event that was advertised as a booze-filled R-rated event. And $3,000 of your dollars went towards it for supposedly educating about AIDS prevention or HIV prevention. Well, Lloyd Larson got up to the microphone and he said, we have to fund this because Jesus healed lepers. Listen to this craziness.
I go through and I read all of those things that are sexually explicit. Boom, 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 boom. It talks about a lot of stuff in there. Why is it then necessary to put in drag queens? But I think when we get to nitpicking, it reminds me of a story, Mr. Chairman, be quickly, of one that was referred to as the great healer, when those who followed him questioned why he would be against those in society who were thought less upon, those who had leprosy, those who were prostitutes, and as he labored amongst them, he was criticized by those who followed him. And he said, sometimes you gotta heal them where they're at. And sometimes we're trying to help those in our society make sure that they have all of the information they need to protect themselves in the environment they live in. And that's what this good agency tries to do.
Wow, we have to fund drag queens because Jesus healed lepers. Absolutely incredible, my friends. Liberal redcoat insanity from the House of Representatives. There's a lot more where that came from, my friends, and in the coming weeks, I'll bring more of it to you. We'll have more after the break. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Concerned about the future of Wyoming, but unsure how to help? Honor Wyoming is giving you the chance to create real, lasting influence. And it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. The Honor Wyoming Bill Tracker is designed to empower Wyoming voters. We're cutting through the noise and equipping you with all the info you need to keep tabs on Wyoming lawmakers, as well as the tools to take action on the issues that matter to you most. Keeping a close eye on key legislation in Cheyenne, we've made it easy to stay informed by providing real-time bill updates and timely take action alerts. Our one-click links make it easy to email key lawmakers at the right time. All you have to do is click and your voice will be heard. Ensuring lawmakers are listening to the people they serve year-round. Protecting the Wyoming way isn't a spectator sport, and voting is only half the story. Get involved today and do your part. With the Honor Wyoming Bill Tracker, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live, and I'm your host, David Iverson. Documented to be almost always right 98.97% of the time. I'm sure the number is actually a little bit higher than that, my friends, but when you're at 98.9%, I mean, really, who needs to go much farther? We do, my friends. Don't pay attention to what the Wyoming media tells you. Pay attention to Cowboy State Politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Open Line Thursday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Well, there are districts in Wyoming, districts and county commissioners, and who don't exactly follow the rules. Now, we just spent the majority, or the first half of the program, talking about Senate File 69 and how politicians spend your money with reckless abandon, but they don't even follow their own rules most of the time. From the Riverton Ranger, Fremont County School Districts commit transparency transgressions. Now, this one's a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's important to cover this simply because you have to hold your public officials accountable at every level. You can't even give them an inch. And the truth is, most people in Wyoming on city councils and county commissioners are absolute redcoats. Let me give you an example. So the chairman of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association is a county commissioner from Jackson. And she is about the only Democrat that's an elected county commissioner in the state. Now, when she was elected, she was the only person nominated. The only one out of all the county commissioners in the state of Wyoming, the only person that they nominated to be their chairman was a Democrat. Think about that, my friends. And how many of your county commissioners, when they were campaigning, claimed to be conservative Republicans? In fact, most of them are probably, all except the chairman, are registered Republicans. Yet they elected a Democrat as their chairman. Absolutely incredible. Now, I said, you got to watch them, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And let me give you an example. And I quote from the Riverton Ranger. Last week, several members of the Riverton School Board sounded off about education bills at the Capitol. Longtime board member Carl Manning described the bills as an attack on public education. It's not an attack on public education because they're not going to lose any money whatsoever. Anyway, asking of legislators, don't destroy us. Oh, remember what I was talking about? The
Horse crap.
Yeah, the horse crap coming from the floor of the Wyoming legislature. Anyway, the article continues. But behind the scenes, members of the Riverton School Board violated a key tenet of the state's transparency laws. They decided to oppose the legislation by taking a private email vote. You see, all votes in deliberative bodies in the state, whether it's the city council or the school board or the Wyoming legislature, have to be held in public. So you and I can see what exactly our elected officials are doing. At its Tuesday meeting 3 days later, the board placed the matter on its consent agenda. And this is the, their support or opposition to Senate File 69. And they were going to ratify is in quotations, the email vote during a public meeting. But according to the Wyoming Supreme Court, it may not be enough to right the wrong. Now, here's what happened. On Wednesday, January 22nd, Superintendent Jody Eibach, now Jody Eibach used to be a principal in Buffalo, in an email gave board members advice about how to testify in opposition or support of legislation, advising that board members may speak or write as individuals but not represent the full board, or a board member may speak on behalf of the full board if the board votes to do so. Quote, to do this, we would need to complete a board poll, including the bill. If the testimony is for or against, or who will be the spokesperson, she wrote, we would then follow up with an action item at our next board meeting. That Saturday, not a working day, Saturday, Eibach emailed the board that House Bill 100, and that's the one that would have allowed school districts to hire people who don't have a teaching certificate, which would loosen the requirements for Wyoming teachers to do a simple background check and an 18th birthday, was expected to be discussed during a hearing that Monday. She asked that board members respond via email on whether they wanted to direct board member Lori Morrow to write a letter in opposition, and they went ahead and did it. Of course they did, because they don't really care about the rules. And, the fascinating thing is that if all this legislation was explained to voters in an honest and transparent way, most people would look at this and say, that kind of makes sense. Allow me to explain. House Bill 100, which it died, it's not going anywhere in the Wyoming legislature, but in a what-if scenario, let's say, it allows school districts to establish policies to hire people that don't have a teaching certificate. They can set their own policies. They can decide how they want to do it, what hoops they want people to jump through, whatever. It's the ultimate in local control. And so, anyway, that's what it would do. So let's say you don't have a woodshop teacher, but there's a guy who is an expert craftsman in your town, and you think he would be an awesome woodshop teacher. Well, House Bill 100 would allow that school district to hire him, regardless if he had a teaching certificate or not. But it's entirely up to the board. Now, if you explain that to most people, they'd look at that and say, well, I guess if he passes all the hoops and all the trials and tribulations that the school board sets out, then it won't be that big a deal. Most people would agree with that. But you see, none of this stuff is really explained in common sense terms to we, the little people, because it threatens the education monopoly in this state. The Wyoming Education Association was definitely against that bill. Interestingly enough, they're also against Senate File 69, which doesn't have any effect on them whatsoever. But the truth is, the government officials, they don't even really follow their own rules, and this is just a perfect example. Now, in the grand scheme of things, how important is it? Well, it proves to Fremont County voters that their elected officials on their school board are not really going to follow the law at all. They're not going to do things in public. In fact, they would prefer to do things behind closed doors. Absolutely incredible, my friends. And, you gotta stay on these politicians, because if you don't, they're going to engage in
Horse crap.
all the time. From the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, zoning protest bill passes in House committee. This happened yesterday. And this is an interesting one. It's, when you read the bill, it's kind of an obscure bill, but the intent of it, and it was brought by and this is fascinating, it was brought by the Regulatory Reduction Task Force, which, interestingly enough, was staffed by a bunch of Democrats and Bob Nicholas. If you want to reduce regulations, you don't put a Democrat anywhere close to it. But anyway, this bill came out from the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, and I quote, "One of the only housing-related bills left alive in the Wyoming Capitol is inching closer to the finish line. The House Appropriations Committee voted 5-1 on Wednesday in favor of Senate File 40, zoning protest petition amendments, after restoring the bill to a version closer to the one introduced in January. The original bill required that 50% of residents living near a proposed development and who could demonstrate a concrete and particularized harm must sign a protest petition to a zoning change that would allow for that development. In order to approve that zoning change, with such a petition filed, a local body like a city council would be required to approve the zoning change by a simple majority vote. In the Senate, Senate File 40 was amended to require only a 33% of residents to sign a protest petition. I think that's a good change, as well as 2/3 of a supermajority vote by the local city council to approve the zoning change. The House Appropriations Committee amended Senate File 40 back to a simple majority vote requirement. And in the current statute, only 20% of neighbors are required to sign a zoning protest petition. All right. So in other words, if there's this big rabbit cage housing development going up next to you and you don't like it, which, I mean, you're absolutely entitled to protest that thing, you would get a bunch of people in your neighborhood to sign a petition. You'd take it to the city council and say, we don't want this. And so there would have to be a zoning change and debate and all that. But there was also an amendment added to it, and this is fascinating, my friends, because this is something that is happening across the state. In an effort to help so-called, quote-unquote, affordable housing, different counties are charging what they're calling housing mitigation fees. Now, that's a fancy way of saying they're just fleecing you so they can support their own pet project of affordable housing. The counties that I know of that this is happening in is Teton County, Laramie County, and there's a proposal in Sheridan County to do the very thing. So how these things work is if you want to build like a guest house or a she shed in your backyard, you have to pay a housing mitigation fee. And in Jackson, Wyoming, I've been told by real estate agents that fee could be around $60,000 to $70,000. And then that money is put towards their so-called affordable housing fund. It's absolutely incredible, my friends. It's unconstitutional. You cannot be forced to pay a fee just to build something on your property. Now, the Wyoming statute allows like zoning permit fees, like in Sheridan, if you want to build something, the construction permit, I think is 10%, which this is outrageous anyway, but is 10% of the total project cost. But it's not $70,000 to build a guest house. This is just another liberal creation to fund their political dreams of affordable housing, which, by the way, anytime you hear the word affordable housing, the only thing that means is subsidized housing. It's absolutely unconstitutional, and there's an amendment added to this bill to do away with that. Now, of course, Trey Sherwood, the only Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, threw a fit about this because her fellow Democrats in the chamber or in the room, Liz Storr, Mike Yin, and Kangaroo Mike Giroux were absolutely opposed to this. Why? Well, in Jackson, these housing mitigation fees are being used to pay for a housing development put on the Teton County Fairgrounds. No, wait a minute. Well, last week we heard that the fairgrounds isn't going anywhere. We're not doing anything like that. That is a bunch of
Horse crap.
absolutely right, my friends. Well, it's that bill passed the House Appropriations Committee, and it's on its way to the floor. It'll probably be heard on general file today. But this is just another way that we can stop the liberals from trying to take as much money as they possibly can from us. We've got to take our government back, my friends. And one of the ways that you do that is you take the money. We'll finish up in a minute. Christmas is over, and all of the fun holiday cheer has been had. And what are we all left with? Frigid Wyoming weather. Below freezing temperatures that you still have to go out in. That's right, you do have to go back to work at one point or another. And not to scare you, but think about this. Every single morning, you get to scrape the ice off of your windshield. Now, while I can't do anything with that, I can make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm while you're doing it. All you have to do is order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And to get you a pair of them, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand. I mean, it's pretty much everywhere right now. On YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Twitter. The Cowboy State Politics Podcast. It's almost like I'm everywhere. Much to the dismay of many of the Redcoats, my friends. Welcome back to the program. It's Open Line Thursday on Cowboy State Politics Live. 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. Well, my friends, there has been so much, and we're halfway through the legislative session, and there are so many different issues that the legislature deals with in just a couple of months. And we talked about a couple of them, but there's been a lot of election-related bills too. From the Pravda on the Platte. In an article entitled Sheridan School Board Has Mixed Thoughts on Party Affiliation Bill, there's a bill in the Wyoming legislature. It's Senate File 98, and I think it's sponsored by Jared Olson, of all people. And it would require candidates for school board to disclose their party affiliation. Right now, school boards are of the nonpartisan variety, which you and I know there are no political races that are nonpartisan. That's just not a thing. And the only reason why you would want to keep your party affiliation secret is so that voters wouldn't know, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican. But there again, and you got to look at both sides of this thing. But in Wyoming, there are so many Democrats that are hiding within the Republican Party that even if somebody is a Republican, you got to question them. You've got to find out where their stances are, because just because they hang an R at the end of the name, that doesn't mean anything. Well, Shane Rader, and we haven't talked about my pal Shane for a while, but Shane Rader is the chairman of the Sheridan County School District. He's the guy that approved a $54 million school budget without 1 second of public comment. He didn't even ask for it in the meeting. The reason I know that is I was there. I sat there wide-eyed while he didn't even ask, and they approved a $54 million budget. Shane Rader is also big in the Wyoming School Board Association. He's a rabid liberal. He is also one of the people that doesn't want to do anything about pornography in your schools. So we're not talking about somebody who's really a Republican, even though he's a registered Republican. From the Pravda on the Platte. Sheridan County School Board chairs have mixed feelings on a bill that would require school board candidates to have their political party affiliation printed on general election ballots. Senate File 98, School Board Trustees Party Affiliation, passed third reading on the Senate floor with an 18-21 vote February 6th. It's 21-18 is what that means. They transposed the numbers. Anyway, it was received for introduction in the House February 6th and introduced and referred to House corporations. Sheridan County School District Number 2 Board Chairman Shane Rader said the school board trustees declaring party affiliation would create a barrier for federal employees to serve on their local school boards, as federal employees cannot serve on partisan boards. He said in an email to the Sheridan Press. Rader also mentioned that party affiliation does not necessarily encapsulate a school board trustee candidate's viewpoints on education. There are no restrictions on candidates expressing their party affiliation in campaign materials, public forums, etc. Political parties don't have a stance on most action items on monthly school board agendas. Well, if they followed the rules, I'm pretty sure local political parties, namely the Sheridan Republican Party, would have a lot to say about what Shane Rader thinks. And the truth is, Shane Rader is the perfect example of why we need political party affiliation on school board ballots, because voters have to know who the heck you are. We've gone through a long, several years of school boards being exposed as radical leftists. All the bathroom policies and the pornography in the schools and the DEI and transgender stuff. How many stories have I gone through from different school districts across the state doing all sorts of nefarious things? Surveys about transgender stuff, teachers showing transgender movies and then asking their students, when did you know that you were a girl? Come on, my friends. This has been going on for a really long time. And for Shane Rader, the dunce that he is, to say that, well, we don't need political affiliation. We don't need voters to know exactly where we stand. Absolutely outrageous, my friends. All races are partisan down to the mayor and school boards and other boards. The truth is, my friends, there are no nonpartisan races. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, we finally got a call, my friends, from our old pal Jerry down in Rock Springs. Jerry, what's happening this morning, my friend?
Well, it's a little bit cold, but I'm not shoveling snow today.
Fair enough. It is frigid in the middle swamp.
We're 0 right here.
Yeah, let's see. I don't even know what my phone says. I don't have my weather gizmo. Well, I guess my phone says it's only 22 degrees here, but still really cold. It's been really cold all week.
Yeah, I'm showing 0 here right now at my house.
Well, what's on your mind this morning, Jerry?
Well, we was talking about the sales tax, a home.
The property
I
tax.
live beside a man, right? And in Wyoming, we're small enough, we still talk to our neighbors. And this has been quite a few years ago, but this was a good man. Older man. He lived on a ranch up in Eden Valley after helping build the dam out there on Fontenelle on the Green River during the Depression. It was, he moved to town because him and his wife especially, needed to be closer to doctors. Well, after they were there about 10 years, of all things, they were building a new senior citizen center. And the taxes it was only like a 1 penny, but with the levies and stuff on the home additional, because Rock Springs was still growing big time, they had to move back out on the ranch. Another 42 miles from town, away from doctors. But it's just something for Wyoming people to think about how important this is. A lot of people, you may not even realize it.
No, absolutely right. This whole property tax thing, it's fascinating to watch in the Wyoming legislature, because it seems like even though we have a citizen legislature, it seems that the folks in that Capitol building are just completely disconnected with normal everyday Wyoming citizens, which is fascinating because everybody's got to pay property taxes, and you would think that even the folks in Cheyenne would realize that we got a problem. But man, I'm telling you, Jerry, watching last night, you would have thought that the sky was falling and that we're going to have to fire every policeman and get rid of the fire department. It's absolutely incredible.
It's pathetic, and we're still going to have people voting for these.
Oh, yeah.
No, they're not politicians, I don't know what to call them, but.
Well, did you see the video put out by the Rock Springs mayor?
I haven't went and looked at it. I've seen it. I have it on my YouTube. No, I haven't watched it yet.
I can summarize it for you. You're not going to have a rec center. You're not going to have a community center. You're going to have to fire police. You're going to have to fire a whole fire department. And, he just doesn't know how he's going to be able to run the city. It's absolutely incredible, Jerry.
Well, he's not lying. He doesn't know how to run the city. That's our problem. Rock Springs we're very, very blessed. But we're not going to be if we continue to elect people like this.
Oh, I absolutely. And actually, we've been talking about that video all week. And the truth is that most Wyoming counties, and Sweetwater County is one of those, they're really not going to get hit that hard, even if this bill passes the way that it is right now. Every budget, and I don't care if it's your house budget or if it's the city or the county or the state, but every budget can take a 10% hit and probably not even really feel it.
And, we agreed. I was part of that time that, I had a good job. I was in a better spot than I had been most of my life as far as money. And we voted for things year after year after year after year, but we had the money.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the children now of those people that voted for those things that think we still have the money, and they've never even looked at a checkbook.
Well, exactly. And the other side of this, and when I was watching that video, what kept going through my mind was, yeah, okay, well, you're not going to have a rec center, but that's not the role of government anyway. You're not going to have a community center. Well, nope, same thing. Oh, and the golf course. That's another thing you mentioned. The golf course, that's not the proper role of government either. So all of those things, taxpayers don't need to be spending money on in the first place. Oh, did I lose you, Jerry?
No.
Okay. But, and here's another one, the Broadway Theater in downtown Rock Springs. That's the one where the hosts all the drag shows. He complained about that one too. But, all these things, man, that's not why we pay taxes.
Right. And that's why I quit going to two events at the Broadway Theater. I remember going when it was still a theater and there was a gas station beside it, but they started doing that. And the people that was doing it didn't even live here. They lived in Utah.
Yeah. And, here's the funny thing about it. That guy that sponsors a lot of those drag show events in Rock Springs, I don't know if he still does, but he used to work for the city of Rock Springs. I think he worked for the Urban Renewal Project or something. So he's a city employee, and he's sponsoring drag shows at a city-owned facility. I mean, there's no end to what these liberals will do.
No, and I don't know if that's the only path they have to heaven, but it's not going to take them to where I'm going to be, I hope.
Exactly right, Jerry. All right, Jerry. Well, you have a good weekend, my friend. I got to run. Got to go get back to the Capitol, but take it easy, my friend.
All right. Thank you. And God bless our republic.
God bless our republic. Yes, sir. Well, that pretty much burns up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear replays of Cowboy State Politics Live, go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. Up at the top, you'll see a link that says live replays, and you can listen until your heart's content. Don't miss Saturday's installment of Weekend Update on the podcast. It's a great interview with a new client of mine. His name is Fred Deshefsky, and he owns a company called U.S. Coin Capital. And we're talking about the Gold Act that is up in the House of Representatives today. It's actually being heard in committee this morning. But it's a fascinating discussion about the Federal Reserve, and you're really going to like it. So that's Saturday on Weekend Update. Have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you when we come back on Monday. For now, from the depths of the Middle Swamp, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.